Hello, I'm David Hoffman with NeoLoch, and today we'll be building a Mini-28A prototype development kit. Let's begin by opening the package that the kit comes in and take a look at the contents. The kit comes with 1 MAX232 RS232 interface IC, 1 PIC16F882 microcontroller, 1 28-pin socket, a paper insert that contains the part list and information about getting Mini-28A assembly instructions, data sheets, and demo files. 1 PC board, 5 1 microfarad electrolytic capacitors, 1.1 microfarad electrolytic capacitor, 2 12-pin straight headers, and 1 6-pin right angle header. Okay, install the right angle 6-pin header by inserting it into the PC board and then soldering one pin. Next, make sure the header is seated properly. And if it's not seated correctly and needs to be adjusted, hold the PC board with one hand while applying pressure to the part. Then use the soldering iron to melt the solder so the part can be adjusted. Once the solder cools, the part will be seated correctly and the rest of the pins can be soldered. As with all new IC chips, the leads are bent out at a slight angle to aid in automated part placement. So the leads need to be bent in slightly to permit placement of the IC on the PC board. To do this, lay the IC on its side like this and then gently apply pressure to roll the IC in the direction of the pins so that the pins are bent slightly, straightening them. Be sure to be very cautious during this stage. If you apply too much pressure, the IC can snap forward and bend the leads far too much. Now, do the same thing with the other side to straighten the pins on that side, and then insert the IC into the circuit board. And make sure the notch on the IC is on the same side as the RS232 connector. Okay, solder a single pin to the circuit board. Next, flip the board over and make sure the MAX232 IC is sitting flat on the circuit board. If it's not, now is the time to make any adjustments to the IC seating before soldering more pins. Once the MAX232 is seated correctly, go ahead and solder another pin on the other side of the IC. And just to be sure that the MAX232 is seated correctly, check it one more time before soldering the other pins. Next, install the socket with the notch side pointed towards the RS232 connector. Just like before, solder one pin and then check that the socket is sitting on the PC board correctly. And in this case, the socket isn't seated correctly, so some adjustment is required. Now that the socket is seated properly, solder another pin on the opposite side of the socket. Then check to make sure the socket is sitting correctly. Then solder the rest of the pins in place. Okay, solder in the RS232 socket to the circuit board. It's recommended you use the same method for seating the socket as used with the other parts we've worked with so far. Next, install the 1 microfarad capacitors. It's very important to pay attention to the polarity of the capacitors. Make sure the positive lead is inserted to the pad with a plus symbol. Also, be careful to set the 0.01 microfarad capacitor aside so it's not accidentally soldered into the wrong place on the PC board. Once all the MAX 232 IC supporting capacitors are in, flip the board over and begin soldering one lead of each cap to the circuit board. Next, adjust the cap positions to correct any alignment problems, and then solder the rest of the leads to the circuit board. Then, trim the leads. The last capacitor to install is the 0.1 microfarad electrolytic cap that serves as the bypass cap for the microcontroller. Okay, if you plan on using the straight pin headers, here's a quick and easy way to solder them to the circuit board. First, place one header into the breadboard, and then place the second one on the other side of the breadboard with about 9 holes separating the two header strips. Next, place the Mini-28A PC board on top of the headers. Everything should fit together nicely. If it doesn't, you just need to move one of the headers either closer or further away from the first header. To make the first solder joint, apply pressure to the Mini-28A to hold it in place and then solder one of the header pins to the PC board. Check to make sure that the PC board and the header pins are aligned correctly. Then solder the rest of the pins. Next, remove the Mini-28A from the breadboard and inspect all the solder joints to make sure everything looks good. Then install the PIC16F882 into the socket. Insert the Mini-28A into a breadboard, connect an RS-232 cable, plus 5 volts and ground to test everything out. To configure communication with the Mini-28A, start Hyperterminal and give the connection a name. And for this demonstration, let's call the connection Mini-28A and then click OK. Next, make sure the COM port is set to COM1 and then click OK. Now we're going to configure the communications. To talk with the Mini-28A, Hyperterminal needs the following settings. Bits per second set to 2400, data bits set to 8, parity set to none, stop bits set to 1, and flow control set to none. Click Apply. Click OK. Now go to File, Properties, and then click on Settings. And make sure the Telnet Terminal ID is set to ANSI, and click OK. Now, power up the Mini-28A, and if all goes well, you should see the welcome message. To see the available options, you just need to press Enter. I hope you found this video useful, and if you have any questions, you can find help through our forums, or you can contact us directly through our email address. Thanks for watching.